All right, it's 9 o'clock on this Thursday night. That means it's time for our continuing coverage of President Trump's D.C. takeover. Thank you so much for joining us. If this is your first time, basically what we're doing is a nightly recap of everything that has happened over the past 24 hours in regards to this federal surge. We're also highlighting some of our Fox 5 coverage. We're streaming right now on Fox Local and on our YouTube page, so feel free to jump in the comments section and leave your thoughts. Today was another busy day. We heard from both the White House and the mayor of D.C., Mayor Muriel Bowser. We also heard from some other council members in the last 24 hours. They're not exactly thrilled with the mayor. We also learned about some new efforts on Capitol Hill to extend the federal surge here in the nation's capital. So let's start things off with a live look from Capitol Hill. Actually, that's a lie. I want to take you to some of the numbers first. That's what we want to talk about. Attorney General Pam Bondi posting on X today. I'm pleased to report another 105 arrests have been made and 12 illegal guns taken off the streets of Washington, D.C. Our law enforcement partners continue to make D.C. safe again. You see there on the graphic the total number of arrests as of August 28th since the surge started just a little more than 2.5 weeks ago. 1,283, 135 illegal guns seized so far. We also heard from the FBI Director Kash Patel. All federal partners are now at over 1,200 arrests under the president's initiative to clean up Washington, D.C. Latest from the FBI, overnight, August 27th into the 28th, 35 arrests involving FBI personnel, 3 gun recoveries, 12 drug seizures, 73 individuals arrested by federal partners total. We are not letting up. Now let's take you out to Capitol Hill like I promised earlier, because we learned today the House Oversight Committee has scheduled a hearing for September 18th. That's going to be focused on crime and policing in the city. We know they are also looking into reports that the Metropolitan Police Department, the DC Police Department, manipulated their crime stats. That was part of what led to the situation we're in now. Mayor Bowser, Council Chair Phil Mendelson, and Attorney General Brian Schwab will all be called to testify. Meanwhile, Arizona Republican Congressman Andy Biggs has proposed extending President Trump's federal takeover of DC for 180 days. That would extend it from the original 30 to 180. That's 6 months. No word yet on if or when that could possibly happen, or when we'll hear more about that. At the same time, some members of the GOP are drawing up bills targeting DC's juvenile criminal justice system, the schools, and police reforms. And at the same time, Mayor Bowser is facing some major backlash from other council members. I teased that earlier. And DC residents for her comments yesterday during her situational update. We played that for you last night about what she said about the federal surge. But we're going to get to that in a second. First, though, I want to take you down Pennsylvania Avenue to the White House, because earlier today, White House spokesperson Carolyn Leavitt took to the podium in the briefing room. She talked all about the president's crime crackdown, the results, yesterday's meeting with the mayor, and more. I want you to take a listen.
In other news, President Trump continues to deliver on his promise to restore law and order to our nation's capital. Since President Trump's intervention, there have been more than 1,283 arrests right here in the District of Columbia. Total crime in D.C. is down 19%, and violent crime is down 30%. Carjackings in the district are down 67%. Homicides are down 57%. Robberies are down 40%. Motor vehicle thefts are down 32%. And assaults with dangerous weapons are down 23%. And property crime is down 18%. These numbers prove the president's bold actions to make D.C. safe and beautiful again are working, just like he said they would. And that's why on Monday, the president took additional action to sign an executive order taking steps to ensure that cashless bail in Washington, D.C. is eliminated. For too long, D.C.'s reckless cashless bail policies have allowed dangerous criminals to be quickly released, which endangers everyone who lives in and visits our wonderful capital. No cash bail has also foolishly forced law enforcement to repeatedly arrest the same offenders over and over again, only for them to be released back into our nation's capital. This is the definition of insanity, and the president is seeking to end it. He also signed a separate executive order addressing the crime emergency in D.C. by instructing the National Park Service to hire additional United States Park Police officers to support public safety, and directing the U.S. Attorney's Office for D.C. to hire additional prosecutors to focus solely on violent and property crimes. So while liberal Democrats across the country continue to double down on their failed soft on crime approach, the American people, including local D.C. leadership, business owners, and residents, are rallying behind President Trump's crime crackdown. According to new polling, 81% of Americans say crime is a major problem in large cities across the country. And a clear majority of Americans believe the president's actions are justified and necessary to reduce crime in these cities. Indu Bhatia, who runs a liquor store a half mile from the White House here just down the street, is one of those Americans who are grateful for President Trump's public safety push. Indu recently told the New York Post that her store was robbed so many times that they had to spend exorbitant sums of money on security, jeopardizing her family's financial future. But thanks to President Trump's strong action, Indu said, quote, "All of my employees, including me, we feel much safer, and even our customers feel really happy when they walk into our store." And just yesterday, Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser credited President Trump for surging federal law enforcement personnel and said neighborhoods, quote, "feel and are much safer." We thank Mayor Bowser for her cooperation and her willingness to help us make D.C. safe and beautiful. This entire effort has vindicated what President Trump and law and order advocates have been saying for years, and this is our message to Americans in Democrat-run cities nationwide. Decline is a choice. You don't have to live in constant fear of being robbed, raped, or murdered. Your leaders are lying to you, and they have been failing you for decades. The President Trump approach of upholding law and order by letting our brave men and women in blue actually do their jobs to aggressively fight crime works. In just a few weeks, President Trump has done more for D.C. residents than Democrats did in 50 years. And this can be replicated in other crime-ridden cities across the nation. As President Trump has said, all of these elected officials in charge have to do is pick up the phone and ask for the president and the federal government's help. President Trump doesn't care if they are a Republican or a Democrat leader. He wants Americans to be safe and for every law-abiding American citizen across the country to be able to thrive in their city and in their community.
So that was just a portion of that White House press briefing. A little later during the Q&A portion, we learned some new details about a possible thwarted attack on a D.C. school as well. The White House claims a juvenile posted threats against a school on social media. We don't have many details about it, other than the arrest happened in Ward 7. Several guns were apparently recovered during a search conducted by special agents from the ATF and Metro Transit Police. Fox 5 is working to get more information about which school that threat was made against, so stay with Fox 5. We'll have much more on this story as we learn more details. Now, getting back to that briefing, you heard her mention the meeting with Mayor Bowser. Mayor Bowser telling the White House that she appreciated the president's federal surge. Coming up after our break, we're going to hear more from the mayor about those comments, some of the backlash that she's facing, and more. Stay with us. All right, welcome back to our continuing coverage of President Trump's federal takeover. I do want to take a second to reply to some of the comments that we get on YouTube as we go along. If you'll bear with me here for just a second, you can see some of them on the screen right now. I should have my glasses with me. I'm sorry that I don't. Darlene says, thank you. Kathy Freer, 1,283 arrests and proof Fed control is necessary. Then we've got Mike Jones Jr. saying it has just pushed the crime into Prince George's County. Now, I did want to address that topic because Steve Chenevy earlier today did actually learn some details about that. I want to take you to a post that he made on X. Prince George's County state's attorney says there has not been an increase in crime on the PG side of the PG-DC border since the federal takeover in DC, but there has not been a decrease either. So that's the latest that we know about the crime situation in Prince George's County amidst this federal takeover in Washington, D.C. Now, let's get back to Washington, D.C. I mentioned the mayor. We heard from the White House already. The mayor said yesterday she greatly appreciates President Trump's federal surge. We heard that during her situational update, but she got some major blowback, not only from some other D.C. council members, some D.C. residents, and social media. You may have seen that if you've been on social media over the past 24 hours. Today, during a ribbon-cutting ceremony at Truesdale Elementary School, she did try to clarify those remarks and put them in some context. So I want you to take a listen to that.
Let me just be clear, Darcy, and I spoke for a long time, and I'm starting to think some of what I said was lost in my remarks. Our North Star is protecting home rule and the district's autonomy in all things, especially during this last 8 months, where it has been clear that our autonomy has kind of been in the crosshairs. That's our North Star. Since the beginning of this federal surge of officers, it has always been my focus on, we didn't ask for any federal officers, we're driving crime down, but while they're here, how can we most strategically use them to accelerate the work that MPD has done? So that's our point. The next point is, how do we exit from this emergency that the president declared? We know what the law says. He can declare it for just about anything. It runs 30 days unless the Congress stops it. And so what we communicated yesterday was the structure that I am putting in place, an emergency operations center that has 4 work streams that prepares the district to either request more or different federal law enforcement or receive the services of federal law enforcement in a way that enhances what MPD is already doing under the control of the chief. So that's what we talked about. I thought I made it very clear. What has not worked during this period of time is ICE terrorizing communities, especially with masks, and especially not having enough information about where people are. I've said that repeatedly. I'll say it again. What hasn't worked, in my opinion, and hasn't been efficient and is not on mission is National Guard troops, especially from other states. And so all of those things are part of our post-emergency planning and the framework that we will put in place to lead that. So there can be no confusion about whether an emergency is needed. Yep.
You laid out what this looks like afterwards. How do you formalize, what works and doesn't work as you're moving forward with this work with the federal government?
Carefully.
What
Well, I already mentioned to you that I'll be issuing a mayor's order that outlines, and we're getting, and we had a pretty good draft yesterday, but we learned some things even between yesterday and today that we'll include in the mayor's order. And I do mayor's orders all the time that outline how district government will operate on any given matter.
Can you just identify some of the agencies that you do want to be working
Oh,
with?
thank you for, and I keep forgetting to say that, because we work with the FBI all the time. The DEA, the ATF, National Park Police, and United States Capitol Police all the time. And those are law enforcement agencies. Now, typically, they work with us on higher level crimes. And one was just announced the other day at the U.S. Attorney's Office, where people involved in either high level drug and gun or even human trafficking operations. But they also have officers who have experience on the street.
So that was the mayor speaking today at a ribbon cutting, addressing her comments yesterday that got a lot of backlash. She making the point that her point was lost and reiterating that she is not supporting the immigration enforcement that's happening here in Washington, D.C., or the federal agents who are wearing masks in the city streets and the National Guard presence. However, before those comments, at-large Councilmember Robert White had some thoughts about the mayor's situational update yesterday. Not sold. He slammed the mayor's appreciation comment on social media in a live post that he put on X, saying it's out of step with how many DC residents feel about the current surge. I want you to take a listen now to him.
I just finished watching the mayor's press conference where she said she appreciates the federal surge and that is having positive results in DC. That's not the case. That is not the case. People are scared. People's rights are being violated. People are being snatched on the way to school while they are working. This is not okay. What's more than that, Congress passed a law in 2001, the District of Columbia Police Coordination Act, that already gives federal authority to work with DC when the mayor and the U.S. attorney agree. So this federal takeover is not necessary for any purpose whatsoever other than this authoritarian takeover that the president is planning to take to other states. He said that already. So we should not, as the District of Columbia, be giving people the impression that this is a good thing, that we are okay with it, that it is helping the city. It is not doing any of those things, and it is not intended to help us, right? So you don't declare an emergency without saying what the emergency is. Say that you're going to do the same thing in other states, really overthrow locally elected people, push aside local police departments, ruin the public trust that these police departments have built over years, and then say mission accomplished, it's a good thing. It is a bad thing. When people are losing trust in our local police department, you can't say it's a good thing. It is not a good thing. And when I'm on the Hill every day, meeting after meeting after meeting, saying to federal officials, we need you to back us up before this goes out of DC into other states and we have a full authoritarian takeover, now they're going to be saying, well, where's the city on this? So I want to make sure I am clear that I am not okay with this. The average resident is not okay with this. DC residents, DC voters are not okay with this. This is wild.
So that was at-large Councilman Robert White slamming the mayor's comments and making the point that DC residents are not okay with what's happening. Earlier today, Fox 5's Tom Fitzgerald talked to some DC residents. They told him the mayor's between a rock and a hard place. Take a listen.
I think speak up more because we are for the people, and I believe if they have someone who can represent them.
I can't be upset with her because her options are very few, you know. There's not a whole lot she can do.
He doesn't think that the mayor is doing the mayor's job. So he thinks he can do things better.
All right, that was some DC residents talking to Fox 5's Tom Fitzgerald. Coming up next, we're going to hear from a WTOP reporter who talked to Fox 5's Marina Morocco earlier today. More about the mayor's comments, the backlash that they got, and what comes next. First, though, we're going to take a quick break. Thanks for watching. Stay with us. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to our special coverage of President Trump's D.C. takeover, the federal surge. It's Thursday night. It's about 9:23. Thank you to everyone who is joining us on Fox Local and on YouTube. I do like to check the comments as often as possible whenever we get them, so I do want to check some more of them. In the meantime, right now, a man seeking truth says PG has its own crime to worry about. Knock it off. Endeavor to persevere, says dude. Poor council member Robert. Here you go. Please this way into the wambulance. And then Moses says thinking criminals are contained by imaginary lines is crazy. Thank you everyone for weighing in. Keep the comments coming. I'll try to check them as often as possible. In the meantime, before we went to break, I promised that we would hear from a WTOP reporter talking more to Fox 5's Marina Morocco on the DMV zone today, all about the mayor's remarks, the backlash, what comes next, and more. So take a listen.
Talk about the latest on that takeover. WTOP reporter Scott Gelman. Good to have you, Scott. I think, listen, we've been talking about this for 2 weeks now. Some people not exactly happy with the mayor's response, more so not her response, but her pushback to the president. And we've seen polling that two things can be true. People can feel unsafe and at the same time not want a federal takeover. And I think that's what we're seeing is how you navigate both those things.
That's right, and I'm glad that you played that soundbite there at the top because that is different from what Mayor Muriel Bowser said during an hour-long news conference with us reporters yesterday. And so what the mayor said yesterday was that they are grateful for the surge in federal law enforcement, that it is helping to drive down violent crime across the city because D.C. police are short 500 officers. What you heard today was a stronger stance, one that suggests that she is trying to walk this line of keeping the city safe, using the extra law enforcement, while also trying to figure out where the line extends, what crosses the line. And so you heard those comments there a second ago where she talked about, for example, ICE agents wearing masks. She said that crosses the line. The National Guard on D.C. streets, she said that crosses the line. But it is an interesting thing to watch how now in the third week of this federal law enforcement surge, the way that the mayor is talking about this has dramatically changed.
See, I'm almost like hearing what you're saying, but I'm not sure I'm agreeing with that. And I think because we've talked to the mayor ourselves, and I think the whole time she has been, in my, I think, estimation, pretty clear, this is the law. 30 days of an emergency. What happens next, I don't know, but she's been very clear from the beginning that her one mission is statehood, and therefore D.C. would not be in this predicament. And she said at the very beginning, I went to Congress when the moment was ripe to ask them to consider D.C. to pass the law, to make that amendment, to make D.C. the 51st state, and they dropped the ball. They didn't happen, and she was almost, in my opinion, warned and said, we were there, the moment's not there anymore, it is passed, and now we're here, and I've got to follow the law or else. We know where she is right now with her budget. She's looked so many times at Congress and said, we've passed our budget, I've been fine, and now look at what you're doing to me, where I've got to figure out the rest of this fiscal year. And again, she's got to some degree, say, okay, here are the feds taking over, because she's got to follow the law. What is her other avenue, if not that?
Well, I think it's important to recognize, too, you mentioned the 30 days, right? So President Trump invoked the Home Rule Act, which allows federal control of D.C. police for 30 days. Now, he can go to Congress and extend that. But something that hasn't been talked about as frequently is the fact that National Guard troops, ICE agents, other federal law enforcement working throughout the city, all of that is entirely separate. And so it is plausible that you see a situation here in the coming weeks when those 30 days ends, that the D.C. Police Department is no longer under federal control, but there is still a large federal law enforcement presence, and there is also, there continue to be National Guard troops, because those two things don't go necessarily hand in hand.
Right. And to be clear, too, I mean, this is D.C. for as long as time and as long as the Metropolitan Police Department has been around, since the time of Abraham Lincoln. They have worked with federal resources and federal agencies. And if you just go into the Joint Command Center at MPD, you know that. So this is truly nothing new other than the fact, the visibility.
Correct. And piggybacking back on something that Mayor Bowser said this afternoon, which is she's creating a mayor's order and a plan, right? And this plan involves an emergency operations center. And as she describes it, that emergency operations center will give D.C. positioning to be able to request federal help in situations where they feel like they need it to continue to combat crime across the city. Now, how that plays out, we don't exactly know what that's going to look like yet, but she said today that that infrastructure is going to be in place, and she described it as to help D.C. police under the direction of Police Chief Pamela Smith. And so that's something that once those 30 days end, it's going to be interesting to monitor to see how those federal resources are used.
You're right. We'll see you next week as we enter that fourth week of this takeover. Scott Gelman, we appreciate all your reporting. Of course, you can catch so much more of what you've been working on WTOP.
All right, so that was from earlier this afternoon on the DMV zone. Now, the mayor also said, telling the media yesterday during her situational update, that her team was planning on counting the city's homeless population. That count is set to get underway here in just about 1 minute. It will go until 1 a.m. Friday morning. Now, this all comes after the Trump administration said that it has cleared nearly 50 encampments in just the past couple of weeks. This count is similar to the annual count that the city does every January. Yesterday, Mayor Muriel Bowser said just about 5,000 people, just under 5,000 people are experiencing homelessness here in the nation's capital. Meanwhile, the mayor has another press conference tomorrow. It's scheduled for 11 a.m. This is supposed to celebrate the 202 Creates Festival happening here in D.C. She'll likely face more questions about the federal surge. We'll stream it live right here on Fox 5 DC's YouTube page. Coming up tonight on Fox 5 at 10 and 11, Shamari Stone has more on the missing teen in Prince George's County. He spoke to her parents. He also has the last video showing her before she went missing. Tomorrow, don't miss our Zip Trip finale. The Good Day team, everyone will be out at National Harbor. You can be there too. All the fun gets started at 7 a.m., runs until 11. Right now, we're going to take you to Live Now in Progress. I'm producer Chris. Thank you for joining us. Have a great night.
Was better leadership in Washington to deliver. Now, Representative Van Orden.